ICO. Mysterium, good investment. Mysterium, cryptocurrency. To the moon. Mysterium, decentralized VPN. Mysterium, virtual private network. Private network. Mysterium, Bitcoin. Mysterium, good investment. Should I invest in Mysterium? Is Mysterium a good coin? Mysterium coin. Mysterium cryptocurrency. Mysterium. Mysterium. Mysterium coin. Mysterium coin. Mysterium coin. Mysterium coin.
This is nothing new. It's a complete yawn fest. People who are new to forks are getting all FOMO. People are blowing up my DMs. People are like, yo, what's going on with this Bitcoin Cash, this Bitcoin stuff? Guys. I've seen this for many years. This is nothing new. It's a complete yawn fest. I'm like yawning, and people are like blowing up my Twitters. Nothing new.
Downward dose. Taking that dose. We doing that downward dose. Taking that dose. Watch me get loud. Taking my dose. Doing that downward dose. Downward dose.
Dogecoin is going to the moon, guys. I've been telling you guys this for years. You guys know. I've been with Dogecoin forever, guys.
Downward dose. Taking that dose. We doing that downward dose. Taking that dose. Watch me get loud. Taking my dose. Doing that downward dose. Downward dose.
Guys, you know I love the Dogecoin. I mean, it's Dogecoin. You guys know it.
What was that? Perfect. You want to be that guy? That's a trippy.
Good
intro.
morning.
Well done, Data Lord.
Oh my God. Welcome to DCTV, everybody. My name is Brad. We got Coach Tamp here. We also have at the Real Data Lord. That was who brought you to today's intro. So if you hated it, it's his fault. If you loved it, we'll take credit for that. Greg is also below us. We got at Greg Chick and then at Decentralizado. None other than Jaime. So, guys, it is another interesting day. We have plenty to talk about, but I wanted to get into what's going on in the market so far. It's pretty flat. The S&P is down 0.14%. Dow's down 59 points. NASDAQ's down a whole 7 points. So really nothing moving around except for energy. Crude oil's down now down to $77 of WTI crude, which is interesting. We'll see where that goes. I think that is a bit of a bear trap, but we'll see. Bitcoin is also up 300 points, or good for 2%. That's at $16,444 per Bitcoin. How's everybody doing?
Outstanding.
Doing great.
Of us ill a little, but we're good.
I was gonna say, are we outstanding? Because you sound like shit, my friend.
A little under the weather today.
Wow.
But you know what? It never stops. The crypto machine and Bitcoin never stops. So neither should we.
Very true.
24/7.
This is very true. So as I'd mentioned, Bitcoin's now at $16,444 per Bitcoin. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about regulation and President Biden now getting in on the action as far as that's concerned. And not necessarily a bash Biden fest, but it's more like, how can we do this properly as far as regulation? If you are in cryptocurrency, I've been in cryptocurrency for a while, most of you would actually encourage some sort of regulation. And that's where a lot of institutions are looking for as well. So we're not going to kind of get into a we should not regulate anything conversation. In fact, we want this, but what's the right path? And that's going to be the conversation that kind of leads today's show. But before we get into anything else, any comments on just the price action of Bitcoin? We saw it at a 2-year low just earlier on this week. Any sentiment on this, guys?
It's still where it belongs at the moment until there's clarity of regulation. Sam Bankman-Fried, all these pieces, like everything else in the markets, is just going sideways. And even Vitalik, one of the founders of Ethereum, said, big news must be coming soon because everything's just holding in a pattern at this moment. So we just got to wait and see.
Yeah, I think we're doing the downward doge for a little bit. And I think that's okay. I think there's certainly going to be some ups here and there. But I think there's such little space, between 12 and 16 that we have to just figure out what actually has holding power. So I think people are going to flirt with that line. I think you're going to see whales, kick it here and there just to see how low it can go and where it will bounce back. But
yeah, here's
12.
Here's the I'll show this. This is your setup, Jaime.
Yes.
This is the weekly chart on Bitcoin. And you can see that it's well below this lower fib line.
Yes.
It's sitting at 16,400. Are we still on track? I think that
Yes, we are.
I still am. I think we're still on track to sitting 13.8 at best.
Absolutely. Worst case scenario, it could do a run up to that fib line just to test it as resistance.
At 24,000.
Yes, sir. But very likely, we should see a move down to that baseline. But it all depends on how this regulation and all this push going on with the SBF wind down goes. It will dictate what direction it is. But there is quite a bit of weakness in the overall crypto market. What you are seeing, though, that some of the tokens or utility tokens that are doing well is EWT in this time period. It has grown. And why? What are they doing? They're the ones that are going to validate ESG for Bitcoin mining and anything to do in the energy industry, they're the ones implementing solutions, real world solutions to it. So you see that. The other one that's doing quite well is QNT, which is Quant. They're the ones that are providing the base for the CBDCs. They're the blockchain that's going to be used for CBDCs, the implementation of it. And TWT, which is the one right below it, is another one that's doing quite well, and they are the trust wallet token. If you notice, despite this whole disaster that's been going on, look at the chart itself. It's quite strong. It's pushing up. And the reason why is because the initial proposal by Sam Bankman-Fried when he was launching FTX and presenting it to Binance and everyone else was they're going to generate a wallet that you can do anything and everything in crypto with. And that's how they got the initial funding for everything. Well, this one, Trust Wallet, is now pushing. They're already launching payment systems that where you can actually use your tokens and pay for coffee and do the conversion for you. So you're seeing movement, upwards movement in real world application tokens as we move forward. Regulation will only strengthen these tokens versus others that have had CEOs or have done dubious transactions in the past. Because here's the big kicker: if all of these tokens are considered securities, that's when you're going to see a big tumble down. But the others, like these I had mentioned before, that are actually executing, but clearly assuming that they will become declared as securities, they have a better chance of survival when the reckoning comes of legislation. So you're seeing what you're seeing. There's setups coming up to where some of these will thrive in the next release of regulation, and some of them will fall in that next release. So it's an interesting time we're in at this moment.
Yeah, I'm like Trust Wallet. Obviously, if you guys aren't aware, is connected to Binance, and I was unaware of actually just how well this chart was doing. It's pretty crazy to see the movement on this when the rest of crypto is taking an absolute dump.
Absolutely, and that's the importance. It always highlights that is the research that goes into this to understand what is this token doing. Is it real world or is it fluff? Is it me too? Ethereum's doing it, this guy's doing it, so me too? Or are they actually leading and establishing solutions that are used in the real world? Right. This is one of those examples where they're actually executing on the initial vision Sam Bankman-Fried had proposed for FTX. They're actually doing it.
Yeah, a lot of this chart though right now in its current action is people fleeing from FTX. If they were able to get any money out, or people who are just scared in general on smaller exchanges going to a bigger exchange like Binance, and thus getting a trust wallet as well. It's highly recommended, but the issue with this is also that it's still a centralized exchange. So even if the chart looks good, even if the price looks good, even if CZ is saying all the right things, you are a single point of failure that can go wrong very quickly. So you just need to allocate your money in the space accordingly. Don't have everything on Binance for any reason whatsoever. And, with all the real world use case scenarios coming up, I'm going to argue that that's where we have the most growth to go, because I don't think we can have real world pay for your coffee, pay for transactions, use cases with crypto without some sort of a stable coin. And then you come into the issue of, okay, well, how do you decentralize a stable coin? That question is still trying to be answered. There is no answer to that yet. There's ideas, but there's no solid answer yet. The most solid answer we have right now, Tether or Circle or any of the like, are very, very centralized. So now, again, you're playing in both pools of centralized and decentralized. And, as long as some part of the chain is centralized, then it's all centralized. You can't be decentralized with a centralized point. So we're still working on all this sort of thing, and it's still an experiment, right?
So
Yeah, the-
with y'all in regards to the regulations with SBF out, who's the next crypto darling for the legislators?
I mean,
Darling, as in to leverage like they did with.
Who's going to be the main influencer?
Who's the next FTX?
but that's the thing. It'll be the same wolf in different clothing. You know, who was it for Mount Gox? Who was it for Binance? Who was it for FTX? You know, like
Yawn
knows?
Fest. Yeah.
As
Who
long as
knows?
there's centralization, that's the concern. We've brought it up multiple times, Greg, is the fact that there is one individual. They're looking, why are we centralizing this? Like at this moment, everyone's looking to CZ, not due to a fault of his own or where the whole community say, that's the guy to follow. No, it's just circumstantially, he's the one who's always been transparent, executed correctly, and most of the community see as of today that he's building towards a transparent future. The challenge is who becomes legislatives, darling. Regrettably, their centralization. Their whole model is centralization. So if someone does become a darling, more likely it's because they are for centralization. What's the problem with centralization is the fact that you have one head, one corruptible top that can be eliminated or corrupted to do exactly what SBF did. It's sending all his funds out, contributing to all parties, and now and him pushing legislation behind it. So it's almost like buying the legislation so they can moat themselves as the global darling in this case.
So that's kind of my point in asking that question, right?
Mhm.
What do we need to do to prevent? What can we do to prevent that from happening? Right.
One thing, if we are going to accept legislation to be legitimate, everybody who received money from SBF should return it. Because guess whose money it was? It wasn't SBF's. It was the investors. It was the clients. It's their money.
Everyone holding the bag.
Yes. Yes. And now these guys that received all this money on all parties, I'm not going after one. I'm saying anybody who received any money from this scam that occurred and they're pushing legislation should return it to show fiduciary responsibility. We put politicians there to protect the people, for the people, not take it. And now, guys, we're putting this yoke on your shoulders. You've lost your funds. And now we're going to complicate this whole thing to, how can you be a good father if you don't feed your children or return things that belong to the people?
It's insult to injury at that point, honestly.
Yeah. We're going to get into this conversation a little bit more as far as what needs to happen, what we feel like needs to happen as far as regulations concerned, and who we think should be championing this whole campaign as far as regulation in crypto and the like later in today's show. Before we get into any of that, though, I want to make sure that you guys are hitting that subscribe button. We're simulcasting right now on DC TV as well as our Twitter profiles, but also on Own the Chaos. I see some of my Own the Chaos. I see you, Troy, popping in. Some of my Own the Chaos peeps. So make sure you guys are subscribing to this as well as we're simulcasting there too. If you're watching on one of the other channels other than DC TV is our main channel for all things crypto. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell as we go live Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern time, as well as checking out our Discord too. The link is in the description, and would love to have you guys over there. It's absolutely free to join to continue our conversations that we're having on today's show. So getting into the next topic, which, as we all know, is the WTF of the day, and it has everything to do with this guy right here. Guys, you'll never guess. It's a Florida man.
Florida,
What's cooking? Good looking?
So this guy was fleeing police at 110 miles an hour. He was being so he was driving with a suspended license. Apparently was courteous enough to yell, "I'm sorry," as he darted in between vehicles across the freeway. He decided to play Frogger across I-95 after he was stopped for speeding, and Brevard County's Sheriff's Department said that in a release on Facebook on Friday. They were quoted as saying, "The good news is that Siebert yelled, 'I'm sorry.'" This is Zachary Siebert. Yelled, "I'm sorry" to our deputies. He took off running, and while he was a courteous criminal, he was not very smart, as after a short time of hiding out in Buffer Preserve, he located a vehicle and said that he would pay for the driver to take him to back up to the area of the interstate, Overly said. Maybe the nicest criminal we've ever seen on this.
Yeah, I mean, Sam Bankman-Fried said, "I'm sorry" too. So this is
Yeah.
these guys are good. He's good. He's
legit. Let him go.
It's the new standard.
Yeah.
Bro, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
All he
mean,
has to do is go to the Bahamas and he'll be fine.
Right? I mean, he looks legit. I mean, look at this guy. Anytime I see somebody without a shirt, like, have you ever watched Cops? And like, it's
Yeah.
the most interesting stories or the most interesting chases are always dudes with their shirts off. Whenever I see a dude with his shirt off, I'm like, oh, this shit's about to get real.
Yeah, he looks like a dude who's like fighting on that YouTube channel Street Beefs. Like they just like do backyard wrestling, you know?
Anthony Yell says cocaine is a hell of a drug. I don't know what he was on. He was on something. He's awfully skinny, so he probably was on it.
He was on Winning. Tiger Blood.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's your WTF news of the day. Apparently criminals do have a heart, some of them anyway. So moving on, I also wanted to kind of get your guys' reaction. I wanted to get your guys' reaction on some things that have been happening. Speaking of SBF and running from the police, there is a tweet out there, actually a TikTok, that I wanted to share with you guys as well, of Sam Bankman-Fried sighting. I thought this was fake news, but apparently it's actually a real thing, guys.
Yep.
That is Sam
actually the dude's
Bankman-Fried
backpack. Yeah.
waddling around in the Bahamas, free and clear. I don't know what he's doing, why he's running, but it's very interesting.
No
Where are you running
questions.
from?
Yeah.
It's just so frustrating. I mean, you have the developer of Tornado Cash still sitting in jail and will be in jail
Yep.
for at least the next 90 days just for
Yes.
writing a piece of code that he open sourced on the internet. He's sitting in jail, and this clown is still running around in a multi-million-dollar mansion. How? I mean, it really
Yeah.
is. It's just a slap in the face to if you don't know somebody, people.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That's globalist privilege. It's a thing.
Man.
If you know the
pretty
right people, you're able to slip out of any situation.
Yep.
Yeah, makes-
I mean, well, the thing of it is that we were we were told by the Bahamian police that I'm sorry. Boss Thomas says, "Why does he run like that?" I don't know why I thought that.
And he
was
waddled
Waddle.
away.
He waddled.
yeah,
I don't know. That looks like a pretty heavy backpack. Is Hunter Biden's laptop in there?
it might
Yeah.
be.
That's
The
how
other
alpha
lap-
males run.
Yeah.
I'm a best in breed. You understand?
But we were told by the Bahamian police that he's been detained, and this looks like anything but. So
He's
this is-
detained for the island. I mean, the
Yes.
whole island's his prison. It's okay. It's
They
It's
detained him
Martha
at the
Stewart.
airport, but then they released him back into the wild within Bahamas.
yeah.
Some-
that's some oh shit. Who was the Colombian? Why am
Oh, yes.
Escobar?
Escobar, yeah.
Escobar.
Pablo
Yeah,
Escobar.
so Escobar, like, that was the same thing, right? Like, he was put in prison, but it was in like this big fucking mansion essentially.
Yeah.
You
Yes,
just couldn't
with
leave them.
tunnels and everything.
Yeah,
in there.
right. So like that's what it reminded me of when I saw that. I was like, are you kidding me right now with that?
And-
But anyways, go
And
ahead.
you're also seeing that he stated that Bahamas themselves stated, okay, all the funds, we've secured it. And
Yeah.
yet now you're seeing this huge dump of Ethereum into the market, which is creating downward pressure into the market itself. Everything's just fishy about all this. Like, he is not grabbed. No one in our government is even making an effort to get him, secure him. They just cited him
Yeah.
for December, but there he is running or waddling,
So this is actually one big reason, guys, that whenever we've been reporting on Sam Bankman-Fried's news, that we cite our sources, because we are not reporting this. We're pulling this from other areas, because to your point, Jaime, we originally were told that from sources that
Mhm.
750 million or 750, yeah, $750 million was what was the total amount in assets that were actually liquid, and so that the Bahamian police actually apprehended that. But then it comes out on the bankruptcy balance sheet that there was actually around 1.4 billion that was in cash and equivalent. So that to me is just more shadiness. Like, well, which is it? Like, do you have? I mean, that's double what we thought you had essentially. So like, what's going on? What's the real story here? And obviously, things are going to continue to develop. It's still early, but that's a huge discrepancy. That's a huge miss on their part. Obviously, I wouldn't imagine the Bahamian police have all the state of the art equipment and that they have an excellent force over there. But still, just I don't know. That just a lot of it just seems really shady.
It
What
does.
happened to that little doggy door? You slide the tray in, and they have to,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
here's your food, boy. You know.
Yeah. So in the fact, in how facts change, like statements, clear statements are made. He has been apprehended at the airport, and then all of a sudden he's free.
Yeah.
Or we have taken the assets, we forced him to move it into this wallet, and yet it moves again. There's just so much mud in this. It's going to be. I go back to what I was saying. Return the funds, all the funds, try to make everyone whole. We have Ray, the old Enron CEO, trying to make heads and tails and clearly telling the world, this is the worst I've ever seen in my entire life. And by the way, he's getting paid, what was it, $1,300 an hour?
That's a ridiculous amount. Yeah.
An hour to
Good
do
gosh.
this.
Well, the
So-
money's not the point anymore, right?
Yes, but holy moly. And yet all this mud is being flung everywhere. It's a shit show, guys. And guess who's paying for this? Bitcoin and the crypto industry and everybody who's been doing their homework about this. And of course, the scammers who should be paying for this, but not the people who are committing these fraudulent events.
It's the same as the taxpayer, though. It's that same idea of just like there's some people who are above the rules of the game, and then there's some people who have to pay for it. And so that's why, like, we believe so strongly in decentralization, because if something's decentralized, then you don't answer to anybody other than yourself and the person you're doing business with. There's not a middleman. And so, like, that's why it is so important that people do start valuing and building, decentralized infrastructure, because otherwise we're all going to get taken for a ride and we don't know where it's going.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So we're, as promised, guys, we will be continuing this conversation, but getting deeper into the political realm as far as regulations concerned and cryptocurrency, as this is really coming to light. I also want to make sure that we're letting you guys know we're not trying to show bias to any one side or the other, but Joe Biden was pretty adamant on creating some sort of regulation for cryptocurrency, and we're going to have a lot of questions and concerns. We're going to discuss them here on today's show, but by no means are we saying that it is one side's fault or the other. I think that it is all politicians that really don't have a clue what's going on. But we're gonna dissect this a little bit, because there are some that may have a little bit of a glimmer of hope for our space as it comes to regulation. We're gonna get into that in just a moment. But before we do, I wanted to get your guys' reaction on what's going on with Kanye West. So, if you guys recall, Kanye was dropped by Adidas, went from being a billionaire worth $2.2 billion to less than $1 billion because of some anti-Semitic comments he made on a podcast a few weeks ago. And so he made some interesting comments that has been flying around Twitter. And I want you guys to get your reaction on this, and let me know what you guys think about it on the other side. Let's show this here real quick.
I went from being a multi-billionaire to not being able to use my Apple Pay. 4 nights ago, I couldn't use my Apple Pay because somehow Adidas was able to legally go in and freeze my money. And when I see this, I think, well, if this could happen to me, this could happen to other Americans. And for what?
Good question. I believe he self-identifies as Yay.
Yes.
It's true.
But bottom line, he is pulling up that point. If someone crosses someone else politically or whatever the reason,
Mhm.
we're not supporting or again. It's just the fact of the matter that someone says something and all of your value is frozen.
Yep. Does wrong think lead to a loss of your constitutional right to property is the question.
Absolutely. The fact that everything can be taken from you by
Is
a
it-
third party.
Is it any different than the PayPal policy?
Absolutely the same.
Yeah,
Yep.
it is.
The exact same.
Exactly
Yep.
the
So
same, Greg.
you
The
don't think like
authority
we
to
do, and we
say-
take away your rights.
Yeah. Who's the authority to say misinformation?
Yeah.
You know? But
Yeah.
it sounded to me in that clip that he's more making a political run for presidency in 2024, like he said he was going to do. To me, that sounded like bringing up other Americans. That sounded like a political stance to me. But what he is also doing is making a case for Bitcoin. It's also exactly what he's doing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's the danger of this legislation that's coming. If it is issued by the same people who received these funds, ill-gotten funds, in at all parties, and I'm sorry, I keep coming back to it, but that's the principle, guys. How can we accept legislation issued by people who benefited from this huge disaster that just occurred? And situations like Kanye, where he makes a statement or has a belief, and yet another commercial like Adidas, not even government, Adidas, having access to freeze or request a freeze of his assets, literally crippling the man financially.
Well, I don't know if he was crippled, but I understand what you're saying. I guess I'm trying to figure out what if there was some sort of legal binding contract that they had, whereas like if he said something, if he says these things, then they have the right to take that away. If he signed on the dotted line that he agreed that he wouldn't say certain things or he wouldn't bring paint some sort of bad picture for Adidas, then I think that's another conversation we should also be having, because if that was the case, he goes out and says anti-Semitic things, and then Adidas is attached to them, then Adidas reserves the right to take that money. But I'm curious, like how true, because Kanye said so many different things, right? And some of it makes sense, some of it don't. I'm curious how true it is that Adidas froze his assets, or was it, okay, we're just cutting you off now. Like you keep whatever we gave you, and then we're just not paying you anymore.
So Apple Cards by Goldman Sachs, right?
Yeah.
Is Apple Pay also run through them? I don't know for sure.
Adidas has the right to pull their sponsorship for whatever reason they deem is damaging to the brand. I guarantee you that's in the contract.
Yeah.
Contract. Now, what Kanye said is that Adidas froze his bank account, the whole thing. Does that mean Adidas money mixed with other money in a single account? Does that mean they just froze an account that was only for Adidas payout? Those things are need to be known.
Yeah.
But he still makes the point altogether that if you get in bed with somebody, whether it's Adidas or the federal government through a CBD, through a digitalized coin, said organization has the power to freeze an account when it's centralized like this. So we're looking at these government stable coins that want to come out, whether it's through Ripple or whether it's through whatever token, Jaime would just brought up. Like, you've got to understand that once you go digital with your currency issued through a federal government, they can do this to you at any time for any reason. Oh, you were 3 cents off on your IRS taxes. Freeze your account. Oh, we saw you went to this strip club. We don't like that. Freeze your account.
Yeah.
We saw you made this transaction with an old vehicle that's not properly filed with our Department of Transportation or whatever. Freeze your account, right? Just Adidas aside, that's what's going to be happening in this space in the name of regulation, in the name of protection, if we don't figure out a decentralized stable coin at some point. And that's what a lot of people are working on now. And it is not easy. There is no clear answer. Otherwise, it would have been done. But these are the things that you need to think about. Bitcoin is immune from all this. As long as you have your seed phrase, Bitcoin is immune. That's why it's different. But DeFi is the future in terms of usability in everyday life. So again, we're marching forward trying to figure this out. And in the meantime, you're going to play a whole lot of centralized games that can burn you bad before we finally get to the end answer that works.
Yeah,
I agree completely.
So help me understand this. There are Bitcoin maxis out there that say that it's Bitcoin and nothing else. So if by what you're saying, Tamp, as far as, and I don't disagree with this, I'm just asking the question. If what you're saying is true as far as ease of transactions and how difficult it is to actually buy and sell things with Bitcoin, and that's not going to get any better, what would a Bitcoin maximalist say to something like that? What's the argument for just being Bitcoin and nothing else?
Their answer currently is one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin. They don't give a crap about anything else outside of that.
But like, as far as like buying I can't go buy a cheeseburger with Bitcoin right now because it would cost more money than the cheeseburger itself to do so. Would it not?
You can. No. It's just not fiscally smart.
With with like side chains, like the Lightning Network.
Right
there are videos out there of guys. I think it's in Dubai where they're going to McDonald's on purpose to go buy a Big Mac.
Yeah, they use the Lightning Network.
Yes.
But again, it's an adoption issue. Lightning Network works, but it's kind of like, think back to where when we just started doing credit and debit cards. Like I was around when there was none of that. There was only cash, then checks, and it took forever for you to write that shit out. Then you had these cards, and there wasn't just digital readers right away. You had to put this in this big crunk thing and carbon copy and all this stuff. Like that's where the Lightning Network is. You can do it, but you have to find a business that's willing to use these new credit cards and get this machine where they slide a number and act like that's money. There's all these mental hurdles that businesses have to go through. And it's not just businesses, it's whole communities, right? Like if you want an entire community to use a certain crypto or to go digital, there's an adoption curve that takes a long time. And we're in the middle of that adoption curve right now. And I happen to believe that it is, once community is entrenched in cryptocurrency, that is when our decentralized stablecoin will actually work. Whether it's an algorithmic form or another form, you have to have a community that's willing to use a certain currency before said currency can be decentralized. Because the other way around, it just gets swallowed up by actors that don't want that to come through, right? There's a perfect example of the whole Luna debacle. I mean, UST was this close to being able to be used just like a PayPal or a Venmo credit card. But instead of through your bank, it was going to be through a crypto blockchain. It was this close. And if you shut down Luna legally, then you had to shut down Venmo, PayPal, and Western Union and everything like it, because they're all built the same on a representative stablecoin. And so that shit was shut down quick, right? So until you have a huge community that when all their funds pulled together are so deep in liquidity that you can't just overthrow it with money alone, we're going to have these centralized issues. Unfortunately, it is part of the growing pain and the growing process, which I hate, but I don't see how we're going to get around it. We're going to have to play in the centralized world, the centralized stablecoin world for a while until adoption is understood and you can decentralize that method. So
the Bitcoin maxis, the thing that they're missing is they're only looking at the money use case, as opposed to the majority of the crypto space is experimenting with all of these other hypothetical use cases of blockchain technology that Bitcoin introduced. So like non-fungible tokens used as certificates of authenticity, using smart contracts to automate business processes. There's a lot of those types of use cases that Bitcoin never claims to do and doesn't do, and that's not its angle. And so Bitcoin Maxi is looking at it just as what is the most sound form of money, not what is the best technology to be investing in early and helping see through into development. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes. And I think we're going to follow through Tamp's thought process is CBDCs are coming, and they are a representation of the most liquid. Everyone's on the US dollar nowadays, the petrodollar. and now it's going to be digitized. When will we see Bitcoin and any other solutions pop up where people are like, oh, fuck, is the moment that CBDCs show their claws. They say convenience is one of the best things of CBDCs, is the way it's being portrayed. But once they see that today they have to go freeze an account, let's say US against Iran or whoever is an enemy, they freeze the assets. Well, through CBDCs, they can yank the assets. They can yank the value back to the source, to the centralized organization that issued it, unlike everything else is today. So any private, everything's going to be gone the moment this CBDC is launched. UK, everyone's looking at it because they're like, damn, the technology is amazing. And it is amazing. That's why it's succeeding. So I don't think Bitcoin and everyone else is going to, everyone's going to look at Bitcoin as seriously until CBDCs show their claws. Once the claws are shown, then at that point, there will be like, oh my God, how do I protect my own value now? So it's not yanked out away from me down the road.
Yeah.
And ideally you'll store your value in Bitcoin, and like, maybe your utility company wants you to pay for it in US dollars or central bank coin or whatever. There will be services that do that instant swap, which is functionally just a decentralized exchange. You'll be able to simply slip whatever amount of value you need from one asset to another, and then that account is funded properly to pay that bill. That's really the technology that the community is keeping their eye on developing as we have new functionality come out. But the idea is, where do you keep your store of value? It doesn't really matter what someone wants to be paid in. You can always do, denominator, numerator, right?
The ultimate backdoor by the government, and FTX has just made it really loud. So people, even if they don't understand it, will have at least heard this before. But the ultimate backdoor of the government is to have slid into the banking system and into users' interfaces without them even knowing, right? So we use our credit or debit card thinking it's just business as usual. And on the backside, the government has all that basically denominated in a digital token that they are now tracking. And the only time you even realized it was like, why is everything frozen? And the government comes, is like, oh, well, you had a mistake. You didn't pay enough taxes in 2018, so we froze your account. And you're like, what? And then it's already implemented, and the common person's way too late to figure it out. I think that's what they would have really liked to do. Because the government's been on top of the crypto world for a long time. They just haven't been loud about it. They just acted like they were brushing it off as rat poison or not important, or it's a Ponzi.
You can pay taxes.
Brushing it off.
You can pay taxes in Bitcoin.
So
in Colorado, you can.
Exactly. So now the FTX thing has just made it really loud for the noobs in this cycle that got burned. Even the OGs in this cycle that got burned. They made it really loud. So now Biden has to regulate, and now they're going to have answers to certain regulation that was proposed by Sam Bankman-Fried. If adopted, now you have to have answers for that, because otherwise this doesn't make sense. And you're going to have some pro crypto and pro Bitcoin lobbyists really hammer that home and try to make that loud. So the regulation part will be interesting, because I think they would have liked to regulate in the shade, and instead they're going to have to at least semi-regulate in the light. Yes. And that's because of FTX. And that's going to be the interesting part. And they're going to regulate in the light under the gaze of protection, safety, that sort of thing.
Which is a good segue into our next topic, guys. So make sure that you're hitting that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and that like if you're enjoying the stream so far. We certainly would appreciate it. As well, if you want to continue that conversation, make sure you do so over our Discord. It's absolutely free to do so. The link is in the description. Would love to have you guys hang out there in our community. We're growing strong every single day, and we certainly appreciate those who are already a part of it. So let's get into this, guys. The G20 summit is going on. President Biden comes out and says, hey, cryptocurrency needs more regulation. La-di-da. We all know the answer. We all know that. But let's get into exactly what's going on. And I have a lot of good questions for this, guys. So make sure that you're staying tuned. But according to a G20 statement issued by the White House, the leaders of the largest 20 economies in the world agreed in a recent summit in Indonesia that there is a need to advance regulations in the crypto space. They're quoted as saying it is critical to build public awareness of risks, to strengthen regulatory outcomes, and to support a level playing field while harnessing the benefits of innovation. The group is throwing its support behind the efforts of Financial Stability Board, FSB, which is, and we've talked about it on this channel as well, which has recommended a framework for the international regulation of crypto, saying that the digital assets and intermediaries that perform the same function as their traditional finance counterparts will be subject to equivalent regulation. And my question to this, guys, to lead into this is, everybody now, because of FTX, as far as leaders are concerned and lawmakers are concerned, are talking about regulation. Oh, we got to create laws, what have you. But this obviously is a reaction and not being proactive about this. And this is something that we've been calling for quite some time. And now it just so happens that when everybody loses a shit ton of money is the time to actually create laws on this. And I have concerns about this, just as somebody who's still relatively new to the space, is that we're going to create laws for the sake of creating laws and not actually look into what is actually going to be productive and what's going to serve the people who are, investors of cryptocurrencies and exchanges and what have you. And so that's kind of one of my big concerns. That being said, are there actual leaders in Congress that can speak out for those of us who are in the space, in this industry, that actually know what the hell they're saying? Because Joe Biden obviously has no idea about cryptocurrency and what it actually stands for and what it actually even does. I'm sure he has no idea what a blockchain even is. We've heard leaders, Prince Charles talked about Bitcoin and had the things that came out of his mouth. We had it on this channel too. Had no idea what he was talking about. So that's my question. Is like, is there actual lawmakers out there that know what they're talking about that could provide some sort of productive conversations for regulation, or are we really in serious trouble as far as this is all concerned?
I don't think that's the goal. I think the majority of people in the government don't really care about landing in the right place for the cryptocurrency community. What they care about landing in is a posture where they can get some more funding for their projects. So, I think it's all about making sure there's some, rules in play that can make sure that they get an increase of tax revenue. I really don't think they care about whether it's the right legislature or not. I think it's just a land grab.
And there are politicians that actually own Bitcoin, and a few other.
Bunch of them.
Yes, quite a few of them. So I would defer to their experience, because it would be shooting themselves in the foot if they issue legislation that goes against this invention, this engineering invention of money, reinvention, the hardest asset on the planet.
Cynthia Loomis is a big supporter. I follow her on Twitter. She's up in Wyoming.
Yep.
She's very solid, really
Yes.
solid when it comes to Bitcoin.
And she understands it. They're actually DAOs. That's one of the first states to legislate on DAOs, where you can actually launch an LLC as a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, which is a very crypto concept out there. There's a lot of them in Texas also that are pro crypto or understand crypto. That's the whole reason they're allowing all this mining operations and everything you see there. So for me to be a legitimate legislator is someone who uses it, understands it, and goes, lives or is an actual adopted it, so actually understands what it represents and how it works.
Yeah.
Everybody else, go ahead.
No, I disagree and continue.
Yeah. Everybody else are trying to apply old archaic banking principles of IOUs or old banking into this new concept of hard money. So those are the ones, and FTX is the perfect example. They were trying to moat themselves to issue this legislation. So unless they return on everything, all this money back, so by people who were hurt by the FTX's actions, which was outright fraud, how are you going to legislate? With what authority are you going to legislate?
Well,
if
they're
you
your
do not.
daddy. That's the problem. You got to ask your daddy if you want allowance or not, and that's the posture it's kind of taking. So, I think that you also have some states like New York who are putting like a post-mortem on proof of work mining because they want to, hold a specific virtue signal for green energy and whatnot. So, like, I think this is a state by state basis. I don't think the federal is going to land in a very good place because the federal government does not like Bitcoin. It does not like anything that they can't, properly control. And so they either have to do two things. They either have to do one, get some centralized infrastructure in between the decentralized assets so they can abstract it and be in the middle, or two, they're going to set up their own, flavor of, Bitcoin. And it's just like buying, the Walmart version of like Pringles or something. It's like, see, these are good too. You like these? It's like, is it the same? Is it?
Absolutely. In this post you just put, FTX executives gave to everybody. So in other words, there are donations. We all know, and even the current CEO clearly stated everything was laundering. It's a scam that occurred. This money was actually issued. Now, just put it back. Now we can accept legislation because you understand what happened. But if you keep it and legislate on top of it, how can you issue? Where's the authority at that point?
I agree with your sentiment, but I also think that there's probably ways for them to virtue signal paying it back and still receive their money on the back side of it too. So I don't know that just because they come forward that makes it solvent. And the other piece is that doesn't mean they shouldn't give the money back. Does that make sense?
Yes. Whatever scam they want to do it, but at least try to make whole all the people that are going to be affected.
I'm just skeptical that
I know
it's going to be anything beyond a virtue signal is all.
Yeah, and I think if it was all donated pre-election, so how much of that has already been spent? And how are they supposed to get that money back at the end of the day?
You print more.
Well,
yeah. I mean, seriously.
Print more.
That's the importance of separation of money and state.
Yeah.
That should occur ultimately. But at this moment, they're tied together. So at this moment, they're like, guys, print some more. We got to pay this back.
Legally, you have to spend the money that was donated to you for elections, correct? The money has to be spent.
There's also IOUs, though, is my point. Like you can spend that money and conveniently grease someone's palms and then get some other type of value on the other side of it, a little text message and a little pretty picture of yourself, and they might do you a favor,
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that they shouldn't pay back or they shouldn't be at least doing something to just financially to be like, hey, we're not okay with this. But I don't know. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. Go ahead.
So don't give it back, but purge everything the FTX or Sam Bankman-Fried issued into this bill they're trying to shove through Congress and everything. Purge it.
Boom. That's how you do it. Unless it actually is decent regulation, which you have to have, somebody verify that, yes, this did come from FTX, but it actually makes sense. That is the best way to do it. If you can't give the money back, then at least don't adopt the regulation without a thorough vetting.
Absolutely. And bring politicians on both sides of the aisles that actually use and understand the technology.
Yeah.
And
they're going to fight for that. I have I believe wholeheartedly that any politician that is passionate about crypto or Bitcoin is going to fight for that. The matter is, who are they going to listen? Who's going to listen? I mean, SBF's going to testify, in front of Congress. What is it, next month? And he's basically at this point testifying in front of his friends.
Yeah.
And they're gonna try to be as nice as they can. They're virtue signaling like crazy right now in the media that, oh, he's altruistic and all these, but what about all the charities?
He's vegan and he gave $80 billion to charity.
And this guy's running around in the Bahamas like he's done nothing wrong. He's going to testify in front of Congress,
waddling,
which he already gave tens of millions of dollars to. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the best chance we have right now are the pro Bitcoin politicians that can stand up and say, no,
And he waddled
but who's going to listen? Well, it's yet to
Absolutely.
be seen.
And so, Tam, you brought up a great point. This whitewashing that's occurring by Wall Street Journal and all the traditional media.
Elon's calling them out now, which is hilarious.
Yes, and that's a great point, Brad. Is when the testimonial or when he comes before Congress, we should all go live.
We will. Yes.
It seems as if the traditional media is preparing for his presence and writing all these things of, man, if we punish this dude, all these charities, everybody else is going to suffer because of it. It's almost it's unbelievable. But guess who's reading this, and guess who's accepting it as truth? The boomers, the old money, the people who do not understand this technology, who think that Bitcoin and everything else is poison, and it's validating their thoughts. Here's this poor guy, even though the new CEO is like, guys, this is the biggest scam I've ever seen in my life. So if we could come together as a community and fact check everything that he says, or legislators start discussing live on Twitter and somehow get it out to the media, I think we could have a more balanced. So we are going to have to bring the fight to them as a community, because we can't depend on traditional journalism to do the right thing.
Yeah. Before we jump into this thing Brad's showing here, I do want to say that this is a constitutional principle, right? Like, this entire conversation isn't just between the ruling class and the lay people paying taxes. This really comes down to a constitutional principle of, you have a right to life, liberty, and property. And if they create laws that do not respect your right to life, liberty, or property, we have to hold them accountable as oath swearing constitutional, upholders. Like, we have to bring that to their attention. I think it has to be peaceful. We have to maintain the highest level of decorum, but we have to make sure they understand that we're serious about the Constitution. We're serious about our individual liberties, and this is completely undue overreach, right?
Yes, for the people, by the people is how this should be done, not by homies and recipients of funds.
Yeah, but please hear this, everyone. You really should value this, because if you don't use it, you lose it. And then the other part is we have to maintain the highest level of decorum. We cannot get violent. We cannot begin slinging mud, because they're going to try to incite that. And we can't play that game. We have to maintain the highest level of decorum.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what I wanted to bring up. So just to tie in our conversation. So this is from the Wall Street Journal, as you were mentioning, Jaime, that they had a headline that said FTX failed because Sam Bankman-Fried supporters lost confidence in him. That's why it failed. Maybe, and the follow up or the subtitle was that maybe how Donald Trump finally crashes and burns too. And then Elon actually
amazing
says, yeah, that's definitely not the reason it failed. And he ended up citing community notes. And this actually was a community note from Twitter itself. Says FTX is bankrupt because of a complete failure of corporate controls and such a complete absence of trustworthy financial information. Not what Wall Street Journal was saying, because they lost confidence in him.
Yes.
That is the purest example of what you're talking about, Jaime, in that the mainstream media, and like I'm never one. People who know me, those of you watching on Own the Chaos, I'm never one to like go ape shit on this kind of stuff, but this is just blatant. Like,
yes,
this is just absolute blatant, propaganda. It's just mind blowing. And Elon coming and I don't want to say being the hero, but just calling people out for their bullshit is exactly what we need. And this is why Twitter is now their daily active users are now breaking records day after day.
Historic records.
Because people are tired of the bullshit. And this isn't a left or right thing, guys. This is just what's the fucking truth. And it's just finally refreshing that we have one of the world's most powerful men actually standing up for those of us who actually care about this.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's about intellectual honesty at the end of the day. Like this gets back to classic liberalism, which is the Socratic method. This is people sitting at a table, discussing their ideas, discussing the merit of the ideas, and still respecting the person across the table from them. And so it is disingenuous to put this much spin on something said in plain language and then try to convince a ton of people that your spin, which has nothing to do with the original topic, is the reality. So I think that as a principle, and this isn't a give Elon high praise. This is a matter of let's make sure we are, as a community, as a global community of intellectuals, being intellectually honest. Let's cite our sources. Let's discuss according to this specific experiment. Here are the results. Let's not say that there's the science that you can't question. There's the findings that you can't question. That's where we begin to deteriorate in our understanding.
Yeah,
absolutely. And build towards a better future. I mean, this dirt and this garbage is occurring on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest concern is, okay, how do we as a society who put these men and women in power by our votes, or however it happens, how do we keep them honest and accountable with fiduciary responsibilities to the very people that put them there? That's, I think, the biggest challenge we need to reach, or solution we need to reach, through our active engagement of what's going on, either through Twitter with Elon helping bring that voice to the global community. Is that transparency, always respecting, but at the same time letting them know, guys, we got to come back to the roots of why we're building a society nowadays.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Good stuff.
And I just had to share this. This is actually at the Twitter HQ hashtag Stay Woke t-shirts.
Yep.
This is
in a closet for real.
This is exactly why people hated Twitter.
Yep.
It wasn't necessarily because, I don't know, if you want to wear a Stay Woke shirt, you have absolutely every right to do so. But the fact of the matter is that you have a company that was clearly leaning to one side and really had no regard for any kind of inclusion that they claim to have, because it was their narrative or no narrative at all, which is why Twitter was doing so poorly in the first place.
That's the problem with the woke thing too, is it's actually counterproductive for people who are on the actual classic liberal left, people who do just have a higher confidence that the government can do something right, and they want to have some government programs by representation. Those people end up looking really, really bad when you have these people who say they're part of that same group of people and they just shut down dialogue.
And it's human nature. I think the problem, the initial concept of woke makes sense for inclusivity and bring everyone together. But when the pendulum goes to the extreme, where now in that inclusivism, you're excluding, it's okay, we're missing the whole point of this. And America was built on, can you do it? Do you have the skills to do it? Do you want to do it? Let's move forward. Now become blind to everything else, race, everything else. Just become blind to it. But do you want to? Let's team up. Let's make it happen. That's how we should be building, not trying to exclude one group or the other, which has been traditionally one of our biggest challenges.
We need to be merit-based. Yeah, it's about whether people work together well and have the skills to help build the thing, right?
Yeah.
Which is why we have Tamp, because she's freaking smart. She does really,
I'm just
really
very
good.
opinionated.
Well, no, you do
right
great
now.
background research, and
Absolutely.
You really do. You really
Tamp,
do.
Yeah, my hat's off to you.
Appreciate you,
I'm
gentlemen.
saying we
Absolutely.
Tamp's not our token woman. I want to be clear about this. She's not. She actually is really, really good at research, and that's why we have her as part of the team.
100%.
I appreciate that very much.
Guys,
Yeah,
Good.
what a great show. And let's not forget about birthdays.
That's right. So yes, thank you for that segue. So yes, we are. It was a great ending to the show, guys. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. We'll be back on Friday. We will be having a guest. Hopefully, we don't get ghosted on that one. We'll see what happens.
Otherwise, it'll be entertaining as always, guys.
Yes, it will be. We'll be sure to bring plenty of drinks. So make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, guys. Also join us in our Discord. It's absolutely free to continue this conversation. We'll be happy to do that with you over there on our Discords. And let's not forget our birthdays. We do have Snooki, who is 34 today.
So, girl.
Damian Haas is 31. Paige Kennedy is 45. We also there was somebody else that I thought that I was missing. Maybe I did. Maybe I wasn't. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So then obviously we'll just round it out with Veronica Avlov. She is 50 years old today. The big 50. She was best known for All in the Family. Nope, not that show. She's a squirter, Lusty Maids in Action, Banana Nut Muffin, and lastly, Your Mom Tossed My Salad.
Damn.
Lastly, Your Mom Tossed My Salad. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. We certainly appreciate it, and we'll see you back on Friday. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. Stay safe out there if you're traveling. We'll see you on Friday.
Thanksgiving.
Keep calm.
Absolutely.
Huddle on.
That's right.
I love your mom.